Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness to order. My name is Jared Solomon, the chairman of the committee. First, I'd like to just thank the governor for sending key personnel to help those that are distressed dealing with the hurricane in North Carolina. He's providing strategic assets in the forms of personnel from PEMA, search and rescue teams, as well as National Guard members. We wish them safety on this mission, wish for their success, and look forward to welcoming them back to the Commonwealth. Chairman Gillen.
I came back from the Carolinas yesterday morning, and I think what you heard about in the news and then some is actually going on down there. People have lost everything, and many of them did not have flood insurance. And so imagine everything you own getting washed downstream, and you may be left carrying a mortgage still on your property. So there's real pain going on down there. I echoed the chairman's comments relative to the state's assets, Task Force 1. We got an HA-60, a helicopter down there, Pennsylvania National Guard. So our people are on the ground to help. That's where Pennsylvanians are at always. Whether I see we have a few firefighters in the room here, ready to run to the problem and to get in there and help. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the Speaker Pro Tem, Representative Williams, that Dan Williams was up on the rostrum today and handled himself very well. General Schindler has served decades in the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania National Guard, and we're certainly appreciative of his service, and I commend the governor's wise choice in General Pippy to fill those shoes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. And at this point, Carrie, if you want to get, because Jamie has to leave for something, if you want to take the roll, please.
Chairman Solomon.
Here.
Rep. Borowski. Rep. Brown. VBD. Rep. Genst. Rep. Haddock. VBD. Rep. Markosik. VBD. Rep. Monroe. Rep. O'Mara. VBD. Rep. Pielli. VBD. Rep. Sappi. VBD. Rep. Scott. Rep. Takak, VBD, Rep. Webster, Rep. Williams, Chairman Gillen, Rep. Banta, Rep. Ham, Rep. Krupa, Rep. Mako, Rep. Rigby, Rep. Shalaba, Rep. Stair, Rep. Stender, Rep. Watro, Rep. Craig Williams.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Carrie. We have a number of bills that are up for consideration that deal with the harmful effects of PFAS to the firefighting community. Before getting to those three pieces of legislation, I want to call up Adam Peralt, who's the legislative director for IAFF Local 302 from Allentown. If you could provide some remarks.
All right, try this again. Good afternoon, Chairman Solomon and Chairman Gillen and committee members. Meeting again on the same issue, multiple times. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? There, good. All right. Nice to see you guys again. We've obviously met on this issue several times. Just to give you guys a little bit of background of where we're at and how we got here. Good. Okay. This actually started out a few sessions ago as Senate Bill 302 with Senator Yaw. We recognized that that PFAS was a growing concern in the fire community, so we jumped on board with our language for manufacturers, warning labels, and whatnot. As the bill grew and we got over, once it died on the Senate side for 302, and it became 144, science and all the research and everything else was starting to evolve on this subject. So we started looking at the possibility of pushing it further beyond testing into the banning process, because that's the way the country's going, fire service is going. Fire service has already made those jumps. A lot of us have already made those changes. So we started looking into the banning process, which was something that everybody was going along with. So that's where we're at today with this bill. And why it's so important is because we have seen in the fire service increasing amount of rare cancers coming up in young firefighters that you're not normally seeing. Allentown alone, we've put 2 of our firefighters to rest over the past 2 years. July of 23, we laid to rest one of our retired chiefs who just recently retired because he had cancer. And it was a rare form of cancer. He was also our training chief who spent a lot of time around PFAS foam. The other gentleman was one of our fire marshals, 42 years old, young family. We just laid him to rest this July. Same thing, a very rare cancer. And he was pretty much between the fire service and the Air Force. He was ensconced in PFAS foam. So there's definitely something to this. The IFF has spent considerable amount of resources for research and development of where we go as a firefighting group. There's evidence out there. They've have produced movies showing the effects of our gear that we wear on firefighters. So this is something that we actually need to start moving on and catch up with the country that's evolving into this. Everybody knows this is the way it's going. We need to start moving that direction. Again, most of us have already started making that change. With that, I would like to pass it over to Travis Tamarantz, who is the PPFFA science and research health and safety guy. He spends a lot of time with the IFF National dealing with PFAS, and he can speak to a little bit more of the scientific side of things and why we're looking at this.
Good afternoon. I have a little prepared statement here. I worked night shift last night, so I wasn't sure if I was going to actually get down here to make it and have to go back in, so I wasn't sure where we were at with the timeline. But if you'll bear with me here, I just want to read this. I think it kind of sums everything up of what we've been discussing and talking about in meetings. So, Chairman Solomon, Chairman Gillen, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on Senate Bill 144 on the topic of PFAS in the fire service. As you all have probably determined by now, I'm incredibly passionate about this topic. Why? Because our brother and sister firefighters are becoming sick, being poisoned, and dying every single day from occupational cancer. Firefighters nationwide are facing a significant occupational cancer epidemic. The International Association of Firefighters honors those who have made the ultimate sacrifice through its Line of Duty Death Memorial. It documents their names, ages, and causes of death. Shockingly to some, the majority of the names on the memorial are there due to occupational cancer. In 2022 alone, cancer claimed the lives of approximately 348 firefighters whose names were added to the memorial. That equates to almost 1 per day. This includes cases such as a 28-year-old with stomach cancer, a 50-year-old with brain cancer, and a 37-year-old with liver cancer. These numbers only account for career firefighters, and the impact would be even greater if volunteer firefighters were included in those numbers. Legislators, your time has come to do the right thing. The main difference between the last time most of you heard me speak on this topic is that we have a better understanding and more options to move the needle forward and protect us. The ones that, without a bit of hesitation, are coming to protect you. You have a bill in front of you that does exactly that. We know PFAS are forever chemicals. We know what they do to the human body. We know that PFAS chemicals have been linked to some cancers, thyroid disease, and immune issues, just to name a few. It is also no longer a secret that PFAS has been found in firefighting foam and the gear that we wear daily. As years pass, I hear countless stories from my brothers and sisters in the fire service about their exposure to foam that was laden with PFAS. For years, foams were sold to the fire service as an extinguishing agent, poisoning our members, causing adverse health conditions, and causing us to die. The federal government, realizing the health impacts to the fire service, have signed legislation to replace PFAS-contaminated foam at airports with PFAS-free foams. The Protecting Firefighters from Adverse Substances, or PFAS Act, also signed into law, helps develop an educational curriculum for firefighters to reduce their exposure to PFAS. Many states have been adopting a ban as well on PFAS chemicals for several years. Frankly, this great Commonwealth is behind in protecting those in firefighting activities when it comes to PFAS exposure. The can has been kicked down the road for far too long. Our brothers and sisters are dying. Alternative foams are available for use. An article published by the IAFF in 2022 cites that over 90 fluorine-free foams are available from 22 manufacturers. At least one in 2021 has received the SERDP AFFF Challenge Award, a collaboration between the Department of Defense, Environmental Protection Agency, and Department of Energy. This challenge tested fluorine-free AFFF alternatives, and this manufacturer happened to be successful. So why am I speaking about what happened in 21 and 22? It proves that we have been dealing with alternatives for at least 4 years. Legislation is being passed because the information is out there. Many fire departments across this Commonwealth have started the transition away from PFAS foam, realizing the dangerous and harmful situations their firefighters are being exposed to. Our prolonged exposure to PFAS necessitates prompt action. We urge your support for Senate Bill 144 as amended to safeguard the health of firefighters across this Commonwealth. Your support is crucial in protecting us just as we protect you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your testimony. We're now going to move to our 3 bills for consideration. First up is Senator Yaw's Senate Bill 144. I'm going to take a motion from Representative Webster, seconded by Representative Dan Williams, to bring up Senate Bill 144. Before consideration of the underlying bill, I'm now going to consider a motion from Representative Genst, seconded by Representative Scott, to bring up an amendment to the bill authored by Representative Monroe, A05715. Representative Monroe, comments about your amendment, please.
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. So some of you that may not know who I am and where I represent. So I represent portions of Bucks County, specifically Warminster, Warrington, Ivyland, and New Britain, my hometown of Warminster. We literally, when they first started testing wells for forever chemicals, Warminster had the 3 highest contaminated wells, our drinking wells, in the country. Obviously, this caused quite a panic. It forced us to outsource our water, which increased our water rates. And I can tell you from, hundreds, if not thousands of conversations with my neighbors, every neighborhood that I go to believes that there is a cancer cluster in their neighborhood. 9 people just on my road alone, on the quarter, not even my full road, a quarter of my road, 9 people have been diagnosed with cancer recently. I know it was mentioned, rare cancer. So I am a 2-time cancer survivor. I was most recently, literally about a month after I got elected to this position, it was discovered that I had a cancer that wasn't rare in and of itself, but the location of the cancer was so rare that they've actually have never seen this before. Professionals, best in their business down at Penn, literally said to me, and I quote, "You have been exposed." Once we discovered these contaminations, there was an attempt to try to really get a handle on the data and have people tested. We were offered to be tested. My wife was tested. Her blood levels were found to be very high. They would not test me. And why did they not test me? That's because I was a firefighter, right? So we're talking about the water contamination, which, to be clear, the bulk of the contamination came from the naval base, not our fire companies. But they would not test me because there's the automatic assumption that as a firefighter, right, I've been exposed. So they didn't want to, they didn't want to mess with their data. We held a hearing in my district not that long ago, pertaining to not just Forever Chemical firefighter foams and other products. And somebody reached out to me and they said, well, I thought this thing was resolved, right? To discover, obviously, that these products that have contaminated my community to such a degree is still legal in Pennsylvania, hopefully until today. Still legal was astounding to me. To find out also that other states who have banned these products, well, these companies still need to make a profit. They still need to sell their products, so they're flooding these other states, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, with these products, is extremely notable. And at that moment, of course, I said, obviously knowing that we were in the process of taking this action today, that we needed to act. So I'm glad that we're taking this action. I can thank this committee and the maker of the bill, Senator Yaw, on behalf of the constituents of my entire district. Thank you, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thank you, Representative Monroe. Other questions, comments about the amendment? Representative Gens.
Thank you. I'm thankful to Senator Yaw for beginning the conversation on banning PFAS foam from firefighting training, and I'm grateful that Representative Monroe has offered an amendment today to expand this prohibition beyond training. I represent an area of Montgomery County that is adjacent to the former Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base at Willow Grove, where it is well documented that forever chemicals from training with PFAS-laden firefighting foam contaminated the groundwater there. Along with Representative Monroe, my Bucks County neighbor, we sit at ground zero on this issue. And like Representative Monroe, I am a military veteran who has spent time on bases like Willow Grove. The Department of Defense and the EPA confirmed that these toxic chemicals entered the drinking water supply on the base and surrounding communities. When we entered the military, we had a sense of the risks involved, but the thought of getting cancer from firefighting foam certainly never entered my mind. Now we know the risk. It is unconscionable to ask the members of the military to expose themselves to this avoidable carcinogen. And to that end, the Department of Defense has issued guidance on transition to new foam that does not contain PFAS. It is just as unacceptable to allow firefighters who take similar risks to their lives to handle this cancer-causing foam. I am proud today to support a reasonable, phased-in prohibition on the use of firefighting foam containing PFAS across the board, with no exceptions. We are following the lead of our military leaders in transitioning into a safer, effective form of firefighting, one that will save lives of not just firefighters, but also their families and the members of the communities they serve. I hope you will join me in supporting Senate Bill 144 with the Monroe Amendment.
Thank you, Representative Gens. Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we know how many fire stations still have the foam with PFAS in it, and what is the cost of disposal? What's the cost going to be for these companies to have to dispose or get rid of what they have? And the concerns are we're seeing so many of our smaller stations that are closing, and cost is always a big contributor. And this is pretty much an unfunded mandate where we're going to require them to step up by a date and to have this out of their stations. And I don't know what the costs are. I don't even know how you dispose of it. Maybe somebody can answer that for me. But how do we dispose of this product, and what is the cost to do that? Thank you.
I appreciate that, Representative. I also don't know what the cost of losing a life is. And I think that in any discussion that we have, especially when we're talking about cancer-causing agents, it's a balancing act. We're going to balance the harmful effects. And by the way, we're narrowly tailoring this legislation only to impact the firefighting community. We're balancing the harmful effects versus the costs for some. And by the way, the response we have gotten is that quite a number of volunteer and professional firefighting companies have no longer use Class B foam. So it's a limited number, but we are also phasing this program in. So companies on the ground will have the opportunity to work with the state, work with the fire commissioner to make sure we begin this gradual phase out, which is already reflecting the actions of companies on the ground today.
Thank you. It was my understanding there are a lot that have already moved in that direction. I don't even think you can buy it now with the PFAS. But I was just wondering, do we know how many of our companies still do have them and what those costs were my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stender.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was similar to what Representative Rigby asked. You know, in my research on this, I guess the biggest concern that my fire companies have basically come and asked is they can purchase new foam, the green foam. There is a very large hurdle in Pennsylvania and probably throughout the nation of how we dispose of this. So I've actually had businesses come to me, talk about how they're willing to purchase new foam for fire companies in their county or in the vicinity of their area. The problem becomes is how do you dispose of this? So that seems to be the biggest hurdle that I've heard from people asking for government intervention, not necessarily purchasing the foam. I think a lot of the people I've talked to are familiar with the negative effects on PFAS or PFOAs. However, the cost to get rid of this or, incinerate it, I guess, has really proven to be the most burdensome thing for people in my district.
And I would just echo the sentiment I just put out there, which is the very folks on the ground, the companies that would be bearing this cost, support this legislation and have for many years. Remember, everyone, we have narrowed the world in terms of PFAS restrictions, right? PFAS is everywhere. It's in everyone's bloodstream, in its nonstick pans that began, I think, in the 40s or 50s. It's in our baby seats, in our clothing, probably in furniture in this room. It's everywhere. But this prohibition, even in your seat, Mark, if you want to switch, it's PFAS free over here. Exactly. But we've narrowed the scope, narrowly tailored this legislation to simply talk about the firefighting community. Why? A lot of firefighters, I don't know if you guys are, but a lot of firefighters have served in the military. PFAS everywhere. The DOD has taken actions recently, but you're talking about in groundwater, in drinking water. Whether you're in the reserves or, of course, folks who have been in active duty. Then you transition to as a volunteer or professional firefighter, and again you're subjected. You're subjected to the finish on your firefighting gear, as well as to the moisture-absorbing chemicals that contain PFAS within the gear. Then when you get back and take that gear off, a lot of times that gear just stays right in the firehouse. So it gets in the dust. It is everywhere. And study after study is showing that these chemicals are leading to specific types of cancers, specifically testicular cancer. We need to take specific action. And we have been so deliberate and thoughtful to really narrow the scope of this legislation. And I think finally, we owe the men and women who serve our community the ability to do that service as we take into account their health and safety. Representative Webster.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I'm not a firefighter, but as a veteran, I understand that position, especially for men and women who have done both, right? Some of our veterans in the community on flight lines and around, aviation propellants and gasolines and now becoming firefighters. I'm I'm crossing the streams a little bit here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the step we're taking today, the important first step about how we clarify and make definitions clear and why this is important. So I'm thinking whether it's Agent Orange, burn pits, things that happened overseas, but clearly with PFAS now, the human cost is enormous and growing. The social costs are being listed, as you mentioned, PFAS being just everywhere, and how I think the disposal issue is an important one we probably ought to pay attention to, but the cost of that and where do those chemicals end up, right? Good questions. The risk to individuals and especially to our firefighters, what this bill is about, is prominent. But at the same time, the liability issues, are also now an important consideration. We know the risk. So continuing to implement the use of dangerous forever chemicals when we know what we're doing is careless in regard to good faith government. And I think, frankly, the manufacturers need clear guidance, and here's our chance to do that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Webster. Representative Ham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this legislation, and I think it's a step in the right direction. When I look at the amendment, one word causes me pause. When we talk about using the foam in training, other applications of it, I don't have any issue not using that foam, because obviously we know the harmful impacts of that foam. But one word in the amendment that causes me pause is that, and I'll just read it, beginning January 1st, 2027, no person, firefighting entity, the Commonwealth or municipality may possess. May possess. And then further in the amendment, it talks about violation of $5,000 for first offense, $10,000 subsequent offenses. And here's the issue. While I agree with this legislation, the word possess, may possess, puts a lot of our volunteer fire companies who are already struggling to make ends meet. Sorry, they can't do any more chicken barbecues. They can't do any more bingos, gun bingos, can't sell any more tickets. They're doing everything they can just to keep the doors open. And now we're telling them that if they're in possession of it come January 1st, 27, they're looking at fines. In Lycoming County, we've had a company graciously come forward and say, we'll buy every volunteer fire company a new foam. And that was very gracious of that company. And then the discussion was, well, what do we do with the old stuff? And they said, well, we'll help you get rid of it, until they found out how much it was going to cost to do that. And then the whole idea was scrapped, literally scrapped. No new foam, because they didn't want to have to deal with getting rid of it. And so I sit here today torn, because this is good legislation. This is a piece of legislation that needs to pass. I spent 15 years in the fire service, and so it certainly means a lot to me, this piece of legislation. But the word may possess, the two words may possess, really caused me pause, simply because we're now punishing volunteer fire companies for mere storage of this foam. They're going to be punished for mere storage, not usage, not application, but literally storing it. And the only reason they're storing it is because they can't afford to get rid of it. And so, to me, it's an unfunded mandate being pushed down on our volunteer fire service, but it's also, an unfunded mandate coming down on our municipalities, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if the volunteer fire company can't afford it, it's going to the township or the borough that fire company sits in, who's going to have to come up with the funds to find the funds to be able to dispose of it. So, again, good legislation. I'm very concerned with the amendment that adds that a municipality or volunteer fire company would be fined just for possessing something and not actually using it. They want to get rid of it. It's just cost prohibitive. They're trying. They just can't due to the cost. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ham. And I welcome any ideas in terms of disposal. If this bill has been around for a while, if there are specific ideas, or if folks on the other side working with the committee want to pay for the disposal, we're all in. We'd be glad to pay for all of the municipalities to engage in a robust disposal program. Specifically, and this is key to this, we try to be thoughtful in giving locals years to ramp up. So this bill doesn't take effect immediately. It doesn't take effect next year. We're talking about 2027. So there's a lot of runway there to implement the underlying legislation. Other comments? Chairman Gillen.
Yeah, I don't see two sides of this issue. I see one side, public safety. Certainly, I'm supportive of my good friend, Representative Monroe. His very compelling personal story there. I worked in Warminster, at Warminster Heights. I spent time in my youth watching planes take off and land, Willow Grove Naval Air Station. I see some nodding of the head over there. And so I've been around it. I don't have a frame of reference on how much of the water I drank there, but certainly we all have a vested interest in public safety. And so I don't see divergent approaches to that here. I hear some questions being raised, legitimate questions, and this would be true of all the products in front of us today. How much is this going to cost? Who is going to be paying for this? And if the state comes in and there's a mandate, and obviously the state needs to take the first move on this, then we ought to be taking a hard look at what is the cost and who is going to be paying for it. We're having a discussion about parts per billion. That's appropriate. And you also have to consider cost in millions when we're talking about parts per billion. And so that's the other side of the coin here. I certainly have a vested interest at a personal level. I flipped the Scott Air Pack on. I looked at my colleagues over here, was a correctional officer, EMT. I've been around first responder stuff and tried to jump in when possible, including coming back yesterday morning. And so when I look at the composition of the committee, EMTs, former EMTs, firefighters, former firefighters, veterans, I think we're all in this together. I got sufficient junk in my lungs that makes it even more compelling that we come to a point of solution here. The yaw bill is something, as it was coming across, I certainly supported. I took a hard look at the amendment, and I think, like many of my members, having a bit of a struggle to get across the finish line with the amendment. And I do have a question relative to the amendment. If there were a refinery fire, a Marcus Hook type event, how would this amendment change the response and the materials could be used in the way of suppressant?
If you're asking Chairman Gillen whether we would be open to making some exceptions to the blanket prohibition, I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
Right. But we have this amendment in front of us today, and people have to make a decision based on what would be best practice. I can remember years ago, back in the time when Frank Rizzo was the mayor, and we had a refinery down there in Philadelphia. It was legendary. And so these events happen. For purpose of full disclosure, the chairman and I had a very productive meeting before we came into this room. And in some cases, some of the products in front of us may be a bridge too far, but in the end, we hope to support a product that both sides of this building can send over to the governor with confidence. So I want to reiterate, there's no lack of resolve on our part to get a product across the finish line that protects our firefighters, make sure they have the right kind of equipment. By the same token, I will be redundant here. We have to look at cost, who's paying for it, what role the state has in that, and I think we're going to have an ongoing discussion relative to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Gillen. On the amendment, Representative Monroe's amendment A0571, 5. Carrie, please call the roll.
Chairman Solomon.
Yes.
Rep. Borowski. Rep. Brown.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Genst. Rep. Haddock.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Markosik.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Monroe.
Yes.
Rep. O'Mara.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Pieli.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Sappi.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Scott.
You're here.
Rep. Takak.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Webster.
Yes.
Rep. Dan Williams. Chairman Gillen.
No on the amendment.
Rep. Banta. Rep. Ham. Rep. Krupa. Rep. Mako. Rep. Rigby. Rep. Shalaba. Rep. Stair. Rep. Stender. Rep. Watro.
No.
Rep. Craig Williams. He's not on. Okay. Okay. 15. You have 15 yeas and 10 nays.
Thank you. The amendment is adopted. Now to the underlying bill, Senate Bill 144. Are there any additional comments? I'll take a roll call vote. Carrie, on Senate Bill 144 as amended.
Chairman Solomon.
Yes.
Rep. Borowski. Rep. Brown.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Genst. Rep. Haddock.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Markosik.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Monroe.
Yes.
Rep. O'Mara.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Pieli.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Sappi.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Scott. Rep. Takak.
Yes by designation.
Rep. Webster.
Yes.
Rep. Dan Williams. Chairman Gillen.
Yes.
Rep. Banta. Rep. Ham. Rep. Krupa. Rep. Mako. Rep. Rigby. Rep. Shalaba. Rep. Stair. Rep. Stender. Rep. Watro.
Yes.
Rep. Craig Williams. The yeas are 23 and the nays are 2.
Thank you. Next order of business is House Bill 15. No, we're going to go to Scott. House Bill 1571, authored by Representative Scott, printers number 1847. I'll take a motion from Representative Dan Williams, seconded by Representative Genst. Representative Scott on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At age 16, when I joined the Norristown Fire Department, the leading cause of death for firefighters was cardiac arrest. Now, it's cancer. Our local firefighters put their lives on the line to keep our community safe, and it is critical that we prioritize their well-being and safety just as they prioritize ours. While firefighters bravely face the flames to save lives and property, they often face hidden dangers in the equipment they use. Many firefighting gear contains PFAS chemicals, which are known to have serious health risks. PFAS, or forever chemicals, are persistent in the environment and they can accumulate in the human body over time. They have been linked to a range of health issues, from impacting liver enzymes to increasing the risk of cancer. Alarmingly, a significant number of firefighters have fallen victim to occupational cancer. The statistics speak for themselves, as we heard earlier today in this hearing. Almost 3 out of 4 firefighters added to the IAFF Fallen Firefighter Memorial since 2015 have died from apparent occupational cancer. House Bill 1571 proposes a simple yet essential measure to address this issue by requiring manufacturers to include warning labels on firefighting gear containing PFAS and mandating written notice to purchasers. We're taking a proactive step to inform and protect those on the front lines. Providing this information empowers firefighters to make informed decisions about their safety and health. It ensures that both manufacturers and purchasers are aware of the presence of PFAS in the equipment, fostering transparency and accountability. While I recognize the necessity of certain chemicals in firefighting gear, we have a responsibility to mitigate the risk associated with them. I also want to recognize that there are 2 companies in the Northeast that are making PFAS-free firefighting gear. However, House Bill 1571 strikes a balance by raising awareness without completely eliminating the use of PFAS, acknowledging the practical constraints of firefighting equipment. By requiring the retention of notices for at least 3 years, we're not just addressing immediate concerns, but also emphasizing the long-term protection of firefighters' health. This measure ensures that the information remains accessible for future reference and monitoring. 2 cities in North America, Vancouver, Canada, and Concord, New Hampshire, are setting a commendable example by prioritizing the health and safety of their firefighters. Their decision to invest in PFAS-free firefighting gear is informed by scientific research linking PFAS exposure to various health issues that includes cancer. By heeding this evidence, these cities are taking a responsible action to mitigate risk factors that are faced by firefighters. Ultimately, we need to be considering how we can protect the people who risk their lives daily to protect us. House Bill 1571, I would argue, does just that. It will help create safer work environments for our firefighters and ensure that they have the knowledge and tools to protect themselves while they protect us. This certainly doesn't solve our PFAS problem, but I'm happy and thankful to you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill up for a vote today. I would also urge my colleagues on this panel to look at House Bill 2238, which is my bill that would ban PFAS in consumer products, including in menstrual products, among other things. But I'm happy that we're taking this step today, and I would urge all my colleagues to vote.
Scott, I want to, before consideration of the bill, bring up your amendment A05696. I'll take a motion from Representative Borowski, seconded by Representative Webster. Comments on the amendment, or were those incorporated in the discussion of the bill?
That were incorporated. I will just add this. I think that the biggest thing when dealing with PFAS and PFOAS is the way we define what those products and chemicals are. And often the pushback comes in very scientific, glossy terms that are way above my intellectual capacity and pay grade. But this particular amendment covers all of the chemical compounds that are typically used in PFAS-laden gear PFAS that is in certain aspects of the turnout gear. So although some of my folks who are advocates on this issue push back on the definition change, I just want to assure everybody that the PFAS chemicals, the compounds that are included in the turnout gear by the top manufacturers in America, this covers that.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Comments on the amendment? Chairman Gillen.
I'll reserve my comments when we come to the bill.
You need a roll call vote on the amendment.
Please.
Carrie, please call the roll.
Chairman Solomon.
Yes.
Rep Borowski. Rep Brown.
Designation, yes.
Rep Genst. Rep Haddock.
Designation, yes.
Rep Markosik.
Designation, yes.
Rep Monroe. Rep O'Mara.
Designation, yes.
Rep Pieli.
Designation, yes.
Rep Sappi.
Designation, yes.
Rep Scott.
Yes.
Rep Takak.
Designation, yes.
Rep Webster.
Yes.
Rep Dan Williams. Chairman Gillen.
No.
Rep Banta. Rep Ham. Rep Krupa. Rep Mako. Rep Rigby. Rep Shalaba. Rep Stair. Rep Stender. Rep Watro.
No.
Rep Craig Williams. The yeas are 15 and the nays are 10.
Thank you. Comments on the underlying bill, House Bill 1571. Chairman Gillen.
Yeah, thank you very much. My friend, Representative Scott from Montgomery County, I visited his district. He does a distinguished job, an excellent reputation. I think he has a heart for these issues and has done a lot of work in the responder community. And so I'm enormously grateful at a personal level. Just a couple questions relative to the penalty phase of lack of labeling at a $5,000 and $10,000 range. And that is to be enforced by the State Fire Commissioner Office. Am I correct in understanding that? What experience and what do we have analogous with the Fire Commissioner's Office in enforcing fines relative to labeling or anything commensurate to that?
I think Chairman Gillen's the first time that we're considering any type of fine in the context of PFAS. So we are beginning this process right now.
So when you say beginning the process, should we expect the State Fire Commissioner Office to be involved in enforcement of fines and other potential legislation, or is this an isolated episode?
I can't speak to that. I just want to speak to this underlying bill.
Okay. I would recommend our membership and no on this mandate and having the Fire Commissioner's Office involved with this capacity. Thank you.
Rather than call the roll, can we just take all Democrats in the affirmative and all Republicans in the negative?
I wouldn't assume that necessarily. I can't speak for the group. Probably a roll call vote would be in order. Thank you.
Absolutely. Carrie, please call the roll.
Chairman Solomon.
Yes.
Rep. Borowski.
Yeah, let's just do all Democrats in the affirmative and then go to the Republicans.
Okay. Chairman Gillen.
No.
Rep. Banta. Rep. Ham. Rep. Krupa. Rep. Mako. Rep. Rigby. Rep. Shalaba. Rep. Stair. Rep. Stunder. Rep. Watro.
Yes.
Rep. Craig Williams. The yeas are 16 and the nays are 9.
Can you take another look? Was that
Sorry, yes.
1510?
No,
No.
the yeas are 16
16.
and the nays are 9.
Got it. Thank you, Carrie. House Bill 1571 moves to the floor for consideration. Next up, sorry, Chairman, for the delay. My apologies. House Bill 1541, printers number 1793, authored by Chairman Harkins. If you want to come up and provide comments about House Bill 1541.
No, it was Mako and
Good to go. Chairman Solomon and Chairman Gillen and members of the committee, thank you for your willingness to take up and consider House Bill 1541. At its core, HB 1541 is about trying to protect those who serve, excuse me, and protect us by banning PAFSs, chemicals from firefighting personnel protection equipment or turnout gear. This is a bill that Representative Bob Mirsky and I have worked on together in coordination with a number of stakeholders in the firefighting community. As we noted in our co-sponsorship memo, the leading cause of line of duty deaths in the fire service is firefighter occupational cancer. PFAS chemicals are known as the number one major class of carcinogenic chemicals that firefighters are exposed to as occupational hazard. Among the sources of occupational exposure to PFAS chemicals are firefighters' turnout gear. The turnout gear is constructed with a type of PFAS that are treated extensively with PFA chemicals to make the gear oil and water resistant and withstand very high temperatures. Unfortunately, many studies now show that PFAs compounds degrade over time and when exposed to high temperatures, and the PFAs chemicals shed and form a dust that is easily transferred from a firefighter's equipment to their hands and skin. While there are some companies that are now manufacturing PFAS-free turnout gear, we realize it would not be possible for every manufacturer to suddenly have to stop production of such materials for every single firefighting entity in the state and to suddenly have to replace all their gear. That is why HB 1441 does not take effect until January 1st, 2028. As of that day, the legislation would prohibit the manufacturing or sale of firefighting personnel protective equipment that contains an intentionally added PFA chemical. It would also provide an exception if the state fire commissioner determines that the use of PFAS chemicals in the firefighting profession to personal protective gear is unavoidable and issues such guidance. This extended timeline is similar to the legislation passed in several other states that have banned PFAS in their firefighting gear, and including Colorado, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Representative Mirsky and I humbly ask for your support on this potentially life-saving legislation. And as a personal note, I would just like to add that it was about 2 years ago, myself and a number of my colleagues trained with the Pittsburgh Fire Department. It was a hot September afternoon, actually all day, but in the afternoon, we put on the full equipment, 100 pounds of gear, as well as the neck guidance or guard that protects you when you're in the hot room. They took us in a room that was 1,000 degrees that they could control the temperature and the atmosphere in that room. And it was a humbling experience. It was a real learning experience, and I would encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do it if they're offered the opportunity. But as I drove home, as I said, it was a hot and muggy afternoon, and I got halfway between Erie and Pittsburgh in the Grove City area, and I started itching my neck. And when I pulled over and looked, I had a rash that was developing all over my neck. And when I called a friend who had also been there, he experienced the same thing. And we called somebody that we knew in a paid department and asked what this was. And we were told that it was because we were exposed to this chemical. I was a UPS driver for 25 years in Erie, and I experienced many things going in and out of buildings and the welding shops and things like that. But that was a real wake-up call to me that day. And I guess it reinforced to me the experience that these people put their lives on the line every day. And then when I come here and I hear people talk about, well, we can't afford this and we can't afford that, as was experienced in that Palestine, Ohio fire, we were all tripping all over ourselves. We were going to help everybody out. We were going to do all these wondrous things for these people that work on our behalf and the safety that they provide for us. But then we get in these meetings and everybody's got to question the cost. And that just turns me inside out. I have an OSHA bill sitting in the Senate, and I know that's going to die this year again, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to keep fighting for that, as well as this. If we know something is unsafe and we don't do anything about it, how do we live with ourselves? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much. I'll take a motion from Representative Gant, seconded by Representative Scott, to consider Representative Harkin's 1541. Any comments on the bill? Chairman Gillen.
Representative, thank you so much. I appreciate the spirit in which you propose this. I know you have a heart for this issue. I hope your other products get across the finish line. In this particular bill, it mentions, and I think it uses the word unavoidable, that there will be some cases where conceivably, under the auspices of the fire commissioner, they would determine that the use of otherwise banned gear could be used. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, I would rely on somebody in the field who knows what they're talking about and respect their guidance and their intuition on these type of issues.
So do we have any specifics on when it would be unavoidable, or could it occur after the fact where it's used
Well-
in a situation where of necessity it was required?
Sure, I appreciate that. And I go back to the Palestine fire in Ohio. It was a Friday evening. I was alerted from some people who were involved from the Erie area who were notified of that. In a split decision, sometimes things need to be made. I would rely on the people in the industry who know what they're doing, and I would respect their opinion on that, as we did in that situation.
Right. And so there'd be certain circumstances where it could actually be used, and one could readily make the argument that it saves lives or rescues people using otherwise prohibited material. So would that be fair to say?
Sure.
Okay. I was out in East Palestine. Unfortunately, when I went out there, I called it Palestine, and I was reminded I was not in the Middle East. All right. I was.
Sometimes it looked like it.
Yeah. And it was very instructive for me to be out there and be shoulder to shoulder with my friends in the first responder community. So if it's unavoidable in its use, and that makes clear that under certain circumstances it could and should be used, then there'd have to be a posting at the Legislative Reference Bureau, all right, of those particular arenas in which it's appropriate to use it. Is it my understanding of the bill correct?
I would hesitate to give a legal opinion on that, but at some point I would think that knowing the harshness of these chemicals, that we would avoid it if we could. But if we were in the situation where we couldn't avoid it, then sure, we would have to use it.
Right, and I'm looking at this through the window. I drive by one of our volunteer organizations. They're having bingo next week. Another volunteer organization is doing their hoagie sale on a Thursday. And so we have legalese. You have referenced that we need an attorney to vet this out. By the same token, now we have the Attorney General's office involved in enforcement with fines in $5,000 and $10,000. And so I think the intent is exceptional, admirable, and I really appreciate the effort you're making here. I think we have a little bit of an incomplete on some of the issues that concern me, and I'm very grateful that you took the time to present this. Thank you, Representative Harkins.
I appreciate that, and I would rely on the State Fire Commissioner, who I'm sure knows much more than we do on these issues. And if you're thrust into a situation like East Palestine, I would, again, anticipate that we were tripping over ourselves to help those people out. And I recently talked to someone in that area, and it's a ghost town. Nobody's there. Nobody really cares anymore. You hear people say, yeah, they got an abundance of money. Money doesn't buy happiness.
I know you care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairman Harkins, for this legislation. The spirit of the legislation, as well as the letter of the law, has written in this House Bill 1541. You've been here way longer than I have been here. Not way longer, but, a little bit of time. I've only been here for a minute.
I'm getting gray.
I have some too. So I just want to quickly question. So I guess, one, when that issue took effect after you visited the site and you had the reaction, your body had the reaction, what was the time frame of that?
It was about 4 hours. We had arrived in Pittsburgh with the trainees and the department at about 9 in the morning. They took our blood pressure. They put us through a training overview, and it was again something that I would encourage all my colleagues to experience. It wasn't for the faint of heart, but we went through all aspects of what these people do with dodging bullets, unexpected school shootings and things like that, Narcan administration. It was an eye-opener, like I said. But when things calmed down, we left. I drank a couple bottles of water, and I was driving back towards Erie on I-79, and I pulled over because it was so bothersome. And I would say it was about 2 hours after I left.
And you had the ability to leave. You had good health care, so you could, conceivably
Sure.
get treated for this.
And it didn't go away. When I was home 10 o'clock that evening, my wife still noticed that I was still itchy and everything else. And prior to that, 2 years before, I had pulled a guy out of a house that was on fire. I had regular street clothes on. I had a sweatsuit on and a hoodie. It was late February. It was a cold evening. But looking back on that, smoke was everywhere. My car smelled like smoke for 3 days later. Those are the kind of things you look back to, you reflect on. you know, I wasn't wearing the gear. Like I said, that was 100 pounds more. You're breathing into an apparatus that you're not used to. My hat goes off to these people for what they do, for paid departments, volunteer departments. These people put their lives on the line for everybody every day. They don't know what they're going to experience.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Also, like to acknowledge we have members from PEMA and the Office of State Fire Commissioner as well. We pay them fairly well to do their job and interpret our legislation and make policies and regulations to enforce these regulations, and they do a fairly good job at it. Should they get more resources? Absolutely. I look forward to voting for that, should that come up as well. But also like to acknowledge the fact that what you did was just a day out of time. There are people that go to work every single day for probably a lot less money than you and I both make doing this work, and we need to acknowledge them today. That's why I look forward to voting yes on House Bill 1541. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please, Carrie.
Chairman Solomon,
Yes.
Rep. Borowski, Rep. Brown,
Yes, by designation, sorry.
Rep. Genst, Rep. Haddock,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Markosik,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Monroe, Rep. O'Mara,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Pieli,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Sappi,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Scott, Rep. Takak,
Yes, by designation.
Rep. Webster,
Yes.
Rep. Dan Williams, Chairman Gillen,
No.
Rep. Banta, Rep. Ham, Rep. Krupa, Rep. Mako, Rep. Rigby, Rep. Shalaba, Rep. Stair, Rep. Stender, Rep. Watro,
No.
Rep. Craig Williams. The yeas are 17 and the nays are 8.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other business? Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.